Vamos a continuar con la siguiente intervención de la investigadora Greta Koppel, que es conservadora en los museos de arte de Estonia. Sus investigaciones se han centrado en la colección de arte flamenco y holandés del Museo de Arte Cadrio, donde ha podido completar el catálogo razonado de dicha colección de arte flamenco y holandés con éxito. Desde el 2004, Greta Koppel ha comisariado varios proyectos expositivos, como las huellas del Bosco y Bruegel, la que creo que una parte nos va a hablar hoy, y sobre todo me gustaría destacar el comisariado en el 2018, junto con John Oliver Hahn, en la National Gallery de Washington, de una exposición dedicada a Michael Sitow, un pintor estonio en las cortes de la Europa del Renacimiento, desarrollada entre Washington y Tallinn. Actualmente trabaja dentro de las investigaciones sobre Michael Sitow en un proyecto muy activo que intenta mostrar las relaciones entre norte y sur y sobre todo ahondar en dos grandes piezas verdaderamente importantes del momento de Michael Sitow y su entorno, dedicado al retablo de la Santa Parentela de Bollnäs en Suecia y el retablo de la Pasión del Museo Niguliste de Tallinn. Entonces le damos la bienvenida y le agradecemos muy efusivamente su participación en este seminario. Come on, Greta. Thank you very much for accept this participation in this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Matilde and Olga, for having me. I am very pleased to be part of this, but unfortunately my Spanish is very poor. I am doing it now on Duolingo, but still with very basic knowledge in it. So I hope you will understand me. And also I will talk about a project that I was involved many years ago. It was, I think, already 10 years ago, because the first idea was to talk something about copying practice and copies. And we, with the Sitow project that we are currently involved, we are not that far still to give any comprehensive overview of that. So I do hope that you accept this presentation. But the presentation is about one research project that we did in 2009-2011 together with the Danish National Gallery and also Glasgow University and Glasgow Museums. And this project involves 4 versions of one Boschian composition. And it was an interdisciplinary project involving both the conservation science, art historical parts, and technical investigations. So this was a project by many participants. So I'm here with also telling you about the discoveries other people were involved. And well, with this project, it was very important for us that we could actually meet as often as possible, and it was fortunately possible because this project got funding by the European Culture 2000 program. And also Tallinn was European Capital of Culture in 2011. That made it also easier to have a more elaborate project than usual. And in the framework of this project, we also had several conferences and seminars. There was one that I organized in Kadrioru Art Museum that was in 2011 and focused on the technical art history. This concept was very new in Estonia at the time. So the idea was to bring this more into the academic circles in Estonia, what it was about. And the main publication of this research project was published by their Archetype Publications in 2012. It was edited by Erma Hermets and is called On the Trail of Bosch and Bruegel for paintings united under cross-examination. One of the also important results of this project was exhibition that took place in 3 places. First at the Kadriorg Art Museum. As I said, Tallinn was at the time a capital of culture of Europe, and that enabled us to bring all 4 paintings to the exhibition. And in other places, the exhibition was in smaller scale, both in Copenhagen and in Glasgow. It included only their own painting, and of course, all the research was also displayed and made visible and also accessible through the means of touch screens, etc. So it was actually possible for the visitor to take also this part of this art detective story to compare the infrared images, the ultraviolet images, etc. Of each paintings and zoom in. So and the exhibition was rather successful. Yes, but now briefly about how it all came to be. So the idea to start to investigate these paintings came from our museum because in preparation of the collection catalog, I was given like the freedom to do more research on some works in our collection. Our collection is not that big, and that also explains how these kind of works that are copies from some periods get that much resources for studying. And so I went with a conservator from our museum to Copenhagen to see their version, because the Copenhagen version was the best known for me, and our painting was always considered to be a copy after the Copenhagen version. And in Copenhagen we met with Jürgen Wadum, who was at the time head of the conservation department at the museum, and he was very friendly and also interested in further research into this topic. And soon Erma Hermens from Glasgow University joined our group. So it was many fortunate happenings at the same time. Erma Hermens was doing research on pigments in 16th century Netherlandish art in Glasgow at the time, and the third version of the composition also situated in Glasgow. So already by 2009 we had access to all 3 paintings, and in 2010 at the Sotheby auction the private version also reappeared, and so it was possible to take contact with the owner through the auction house, and the owner was kindly agreed and gave permission to study his painting too. So this was the corpus for our study, and the idea was to study them parallel and also both to keep the technical analysis and the art historical study in close dialogue. And briefly about the provenance and the historiography of the paintings, what we know. The Glasgow painting, the version D here, has been known in art history since 1902. So it took part of the Flemish Primitives exhibition in Bruges in 1902, and at the time belonged to Claude Phillips, a connoisseur and art journalist in England. This painting was considered to be a Boschian painting, work not original Bosch, but likely a workshop or a Bosch circle work. And the other painting that was also reasonably well known is and was the Copenhagen painting, here the version A. This painting was discovered by Max Jakob Friedländer from Mathiesen gallery in Germany in 1931, where this was sold as possible Hieronymus Bosch work. But Friedländer was convinced that it's not by Hieronymus Bosch, but by Pieter Bruegel the Elder, and he wrote an article about it and dated the painting into 1556, so into very early years of the painting oeuvre of Pieter Bruegel the Elder. So the Carlsberg Foundation bought the painting to the Danish National Gallery in 1932. So from 1930s to 1960s, the painting appeared or was included into service of Pieter Bruegel the Elder quite often. What's more, the private painting, the first mention is in 1910 at the Brunner's Gallery in Paris, and it has circled among the private collections and in the auctions ever since. The last owner bought it in 1973 from an auction house in Madrid. And so it was resold in 2010, and its current whereabouts is not known. Our painting came to our museum in 1955, and it came from Moscow, from the former embassy of Estonian Republic. And it was purchased in 1920s from St. Petersburg and Petrograd by one state official. So we don't know much about the earlier history about the works. During the conservation work of Tallinn painting in 1999, we found some strips of Italian newspaper from behind. So it might be that in late 19th century the painting was in Italy. One of the idea when we started to do survey on the paintings were like the traditional art historical interest, that if it's possible to find out which of the works is the original or the first one, and could we date them chronologically, and perhaps also, is it possible to attribute the paintings? And is it possible to clarify what relations do the paintings have to the art of Hieronymus Bosch and to the art of Pieter Bruegel the Elder? So about the genealogy, genesis of the paintings, both Hieronymus Bosch and Pieter Bruegel the Elder have been mentioned, and mainly one finds here Bosch influences. For example, the architectural structure of this temple building is considered to be influenced by Hieronymus Bosch. The first example that could be pointed out is the temple building in the altarpiece of St. Anthony in Lisbon, but also generally concerning how the characters are like scattered all over the image. Also the hay vein triptych, or the central part of it, comes as a possible link. And regarding the roof of the temple and the turrets on top of the roof, there is a print war elephant by Alartu Hamel, who was active probably at the Hieronymus Bosch workshop or closely related to it. So, but this composition might be his own invention. The name Bosch that is added to this print may indicate or refer to the city, not to Hieronymus Bosch. So there are several links in the art of Hieronymus Bosch and his circle that can be deduced or find in the composition. Also regards to some details, the city view and the bridge and the Ecce Homo motif in the composition, in the trader's composition. Here I give you Tallinn version. You can find parallels in the Ecce Homo by Hieronymus Bosch that is now at the Städel Museum in Frankfurt. Another motifs also very Boschian is the dentist or the quack motif, where you can find comparative links from Bosch circle. A painting, a Hayway painting, the dentist is here, a probable follower of Bosch spectators, and also linked to the Bosch workshop is the Gonjour composition that is replicated many times. And if Friedlander speaks of the Bruegel influences, he points out the clock with a hand that does not occur in any Bosch compositions, but is extends in Pieter Bruegel's works. Here in the engraving of Sloth from the series of 7 Deadly Sins. And the clocks in the traders' paintings, in all, in 3 of them, the hand points to the 11, and in Tallinn composition, it now points to 12, but if you see the underdrawing, it initially was also planned to be slightly more optimistic. But if this is an invention by Pieter Bruegel the Elder or not, is also we cannot be so sure about it, because so much of the art production of the time has not preserved. And also Friedlander, when he describes the element motive, he mentions it as the motive in the spirit of Hieronymus Bosch. So more details. There are pillars of idol figure. If to compare these, we see that the one in Tallinn and private collection they are more similar. They both depict a figure with a certain, like a human face, or like a humanoid figure on top of it. And then Copenhagen and Glasgow figure, they have a figure with a swine head instead. And this motif does not occur in Bruegel or in Bosch, but there is in Oxford Ashmolean Museum a drawing in the style of Hieronymus Bosch, or by like follower of Bosch, Saint Martin scene that has this motif, and this motif is very similar to the version in Glasgow. We also try to find out the chronology of these all four versions, and for that we did also dendrochronological analysis, and this proved that the private version was the first one. The analysis dated it already into 1520s, 1530s, but it is more likely that the painting comes from somewhere 1550. Tallinn and the Copenhagen version, as expected, were really close to each other, so somewhere from 1560s, 1570s. And the Glasgow version, which we could not to which we could not do dendrochronological analysis, because in some earlier conservation treatment, the panel was covered with a canvas. But with the X-ray, it confirmed the suggested dating that this painting is done from somewhere 1575 and early 17th century. And regards the private version of the composition, from a stylistic point of view, this would be the most likeliest work to find an author or the artist name who painted the work, or is it? So stylistically, it is very close to the work of the painting exhibited at the Bilbao Fine Arts Museum, that is attributed by the museum to Jan van Dijn, but in art historical libraries and also archives at the RKD, for example, this bears also old attribution to Jan Verbeek. The Verbeek family was active in Mechelen in somewhere in 1550s. Jan van Dijn was active in Haarlem and later in Antwerp, and they both Verbeeks and van Dijn are known for making Boschian paintings in this grotesque style. But there are practically no signed works. There is only one signed van Dijn painting in Haarlem, and this looks slightly different. And also, this painting has been, that is now in private collection, has been attributed both to Jan van Dijn and Pieter Huys. And Pieter Huys was also a painter active in Antwerp, and he was a real chameleon painter in the sense that he imitated the popular styles and produced works accordingly. So he made works that looked like Bosch paintings, also those looked like van Dijn or Verbeek paintings, but for example also paintings in the style of Jan Sanders van Hemessen. So it is very difficult to find a name to that style, but at least it is very dateable. So, and two versions of these compositions that look very close to one another are the one in Copenhagen and the one in Tallinn. And traditionally, it has been always assumed that the Tallinn copy was made after the Copenhagen copy. And Copenhagen work was also considered to be like original work in many sense. If to compare these paintings, then, for example, regards to the execution, the Tallinn figures or the painting is rather stiff, but the Copenhagen painting is painted with more loose hand and swift brushwork. Yes, but of course, Tallinn version is not based on Copenhagen, but they probably both have one prototype that they copy. If one looks the Copenhagen painting in more detail, it is easy to see that the Copenhagen painting was not finished. There are some very significant parts that have been left undone. For example, the right part of the temple building in Copenhagen, this is only covered with black underpaint, but one sees both in Tallinn painting and also the private that it has been like delicately painted out. And there is a very significant element, the limping devil figure, who kind of guides the people downhill past to the idol figure to the damnation. And this same figure can be also marked in the Glasgow version. So, and also what we noticed when comparing also the paint compositions and the underdrawing, that we could conclude that none of the works were made at the same workshop. So they all come from different workshops. And what was also interesting to see was to see about the workshop practice, that there was not only a vertical division of work, but also like horizontal division of works, like hands side by side doing the underdrawings. And we did not, of course, get firm answers about what who were the painters or the artists who made that. This showed us only that these kind of questions are rather naive to ask from that period art. And but more, even the question whether this composition is actually based on the extant work by Hieronymus Bosch remained open. There were two art historians who believed that it was so. One was Bernard Vermette, and the other one was Paul van den Broek. They both contributed to the research, but there were other opinions too. Like I personally tend to think that there were more inventive artists working at the time than only Bosch and Bruegel. So of course it cannot be based on Bruegel, because the Jan Mandijn version already predates the time when Bruegel could have made the composition. And regards the Glasgow version, these discoveries that we made were perhaps the most intriguing and most informative in the study of art history. For example, of course, if we look the Glasgow version, this looks the most closest to Hieronymus Bosch. So it has this organic growth on top of the temple roof, and also some other elements which can be found in very well-known Bosch works. For example, the fountain in the Garden of Earthly Delights in Prado, and also the landscape of the Glasgow painting is very closely related to the landscape scene of the adoration of the Magi altarpiece also in Prado. So this Glasgow composition mixes different, very distinguishing Bosch elements in one composition to make it look more Bosch. And also, most of the paintings from that period are not signed, but this painting you see, it is signed, or the inscription Hieronymus Bosch has been added to the painting. So the idea is also to underline the authenticity of the painting. And what was also curious was that this painting had this unpainted narrow frame around it, or a border around it, indicating that it was painted in the period when paintings still were painted inside frame. But in this case, there would have been like some of the paint in relief, but actually the Glasgow painting did not have a relief. So it was painted on easel, but indicating that it was painted inside the frame. And also the paint analysis showed that the soot was mixed inside the painting. So this again shows that already when this painting was made, it was made so that to look already like aged painting. And it brings to mind the words by Felipe de Guevara, who describes how often, how frequently Bosch paintings were faked or forged in Antwerp, and how they were also smoked in the fireplaces, that the fresh paintings would look older. So we were very thankful that these results we did not get for the private painting, but for the painting that is in the state collection. So otherwise, I would suppose that the art historical value would have been less valuable for the private owner. But luckily, in the state institutions, we can cherish that kind of not monetary values too. And yeah, so this was the project. And slightly I heard that Matilda said some words about why I have been invited to your seminar, and maybe to your project team, is because the simultaneous project that we have going on here in Estonia, and together with the Swedish and German partners. Project is about investigating two altarpieces in a dialogue. Both altarpieces have been attributed to Michel Sitzo, the painter that was born in Tallinn but had a very itinerant career, and was also a painter of Queen Isabel of Castile. And in this research, we are very greatly indebted to Matthias Weniger's survey, because his monumental book about pre-painters at the court of Isabel of Castile, he discusses the paintings of the Passion altarpiece in Tallinn, or the paintings on the outer side of the wings, this ones, and also the Bolmes altarpiece as a work by Michael Sitzow and his workshop in Tallinn from the period of 1520s. So these works, of course, are not very they have not been accepted by most of the Sitzow scholars, but there are many reasons for that why they have not been, because one of the reasons is that Sitzow painted very small portraits, and these are large altarpieces. But we know from the documents that when he was active in Tallinn that he had that kind of orders too, and he had none of the portrait orders here in Tallinn. And secondly is, of course, that Sitzow's oeuvre has been investigated from the perspective of him being a Netherlandish, a representative of the Netherlandish school of painting, but he was a very, he had to adjust according to different orders and different circumstances. And this is what we are about to delve more into. So last week we just had a research meeting in Bolmes. Here is just a photograph of it with the Swedish colleagues, and also with Till Holger Borcher from Belgium and Jan Friedrich Richter from Germany, who recently made the late Gothic exhibition in Berlin, who investigates the carved part of the altarpiece, and also colleagues from Uppsala University and the National Museum in Stockholm. So I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, you, Greta, for to show us your research about Bruegel and Bosch, and thank you very much. Thank you for research. And this last information about the meeting in Bolnas, your group of research, thank you.